Hey my tech friends, thanks for stopping by. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's continue to grow this channel. Hope you guys enjoy this video. Hey guys, welcome to another Spectre video. So in this particular video, what we're going to do is we're going to go over application install. We're going to run an antivirus scan on this system so you could visually see it. We're going to do a quick Wireshark scan after we get all our applications installed. And then we're going to jump into the Nessus Scan and do a Nessus Scan of the actual system again to see specifically what we get after we run our scan, after we run all of the installation packages on this particular system. Stick around. Okay guys, so we have an internet connection set. We're connected out to the outside. We've made sure our Windows firewall is re-enabled. We've taken a look at our total size of the drive before we do any of the installation. Let's install some applications on the system and see where we get. I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install Firefox on the system. Okay, so I used Internet Explorer to get to Firefox to download the package, and now it's running the package on the actual system. While it's going, let's take a look and continue to watch our drive space as it decreases as we install applications. Now, obviously, this is going to happen on every application we install. We're going to lose size. But this is something that can't be really avoided because applications in themselves have size. So let's continue on. We'll continue through the process here of getting Firefox just default configured by following through the 75 million steps that it's going to request or require of me, just like every other modern browser for whatever reason. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to the Steam store, and I'm going to click to install Steam. So generally, I wouldn't keep the videos running as long as they do. I would cut them in and out to contain the size or to compress the size. But generally, with these applications, since this is really the full package, the first thing we're going to install on here, I want to make sure that this package actually works completely, correctly. And if it throws an error, if we get a blue screen of death, I may miss it if I pause the video. So at times, you may see these videos clip, or other times you may not. And the reason why I do that is because if there's nothing discovered in the process, I don't want to waste your time having to watch it. With that said, Steam did install correctly, so we do have a username and password. We can log into the application, and usually at this point, I would say that this is works. Now, obviously, if you're running like Windows XP, you might get to this point, but you know, there's reasons why with XP you couldn't log into Steam, but in Windows 10 it'll work. It's a supported operating system, and even though this is trimmed down, it's still a supported operating system. So I would say Steam is a win. Steam works. So next, I think what I want to do is I'd like to install FreeOffice on this system as a backup to our Microsoft Office, which I'll also install on this system. Okay, so now we're on the FreeOffice website. All I'm going to do is specifically just download it. Windows. Okay, so we have our application downloaded. Let's just launch that. It's going to complain because I'm running an MSI file directly through the browser. Now, if you guys need an Office application, full disclosure, this particular one works really well, but it's only for home use. So if you have a business or something, you'd have to purchase it. But for home use, all you have to do is register with an email address, and they'll send you the key. When we log into it for the first time, I think you get 14 opens and closes on it. For the first 14 times that you use it, it's totally free with no registration. After that, you have to register for it. But once you register for it, you get the full suite, and it works really well. It's a very good application based off of, you know, if you're used to like the Microsoft Office realm. Obviously, it doesn't come with like an Outlook comparable system or application, but it does give you the look, the feel of a Microsoft Office application or Microsoft Office product. And we'll open it up here so you can check it out. But so there you go. And like I said, it does look like Microsoft Office, so this works. So far, we haven't had any issues installing any applications on this. I know there's been questions because somebody had mentioned in a previous comment section for a previous video that on the Lite 11 Beta 1 version that they had a problem that they couldn't run certain applications on it. But that operating system is quite a bit smaller than this one is from the get-go, so chances are this will work fine. Let's continue on through the process here. Let's get Microsoft Office installed on it next. So before we install Office, I just wanted to touch base real quick and show you where we're at. We're at 18.7 gigs free of the 34.8. Okay, guys, so I popped the CD in the tray for the Microsoft Office installation. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because if not, I have to download this entire thing onto this machine, which will take forever. And I'd rather just run it from the disk if at all possible. And since I'm not going to license it, I'm going to leave it for the 3-day trial period. And likely after we're done with this video, reset the system back to the way it was. There's really no reason for me to download that entire ISO to continue to install it. So just if you're curious how big this package is, I believe all installed without the updates, it's 4.15 gigs in size. So it is an enormous installation process to actually get this installed on the system. And we'll check back once this gets closer to the end as to whether or not there's any errors. But I don't want to have you guys sit here and wait for this one too to go completely through like we did on the Steam package. All right, guys, so that finished. We have our Microsoft Office configuration here now installed. So we're just going to hit close. And you'll notice now we're down to 15.2 gigs of free space. So we've added a lot at this point because Office itself is enormous. But let's take a look and see if all of these applications work. So we know already that our Steam application works because that starts up with Windows, and that's should be actually running here in the tray. And if not, we could always launch it. All right, so Steam works. Let's take a look. We know that Office works. We were able to open this before, so we know that that works. Let's see if Microsoft Office runs. Specifically, let's look for Word because Word should allow us to open things and view it without necessarily editing it because we don't have a license. So there we go. We are able to get into this. It does work, at least for a viewpoint. Again, I'm not going to license it because there's no reason to. We're going to reset this and go back so that way we can continue on in our next step in our next video. So now we've proved that you can actually use this as a daily driver operating system. We do have the ability to run applications, install applications. Something in addition that I would probably install on this thing would be like Notepad++, just because I believe in a previous video I tried to open something on here and I couldn't view it because we didn't have a Notepad application installed on it. And I can't remember if that's on this or on Tiny Windows 11 or Tiny 10. I can't specifically remember, but if that's the case, I would just install Notepad++ on here to add to the application list. So I figure I might as well do that, right? Let's get Notepad++ installed on this thing. Great, so we have Notepad++ now. And again, everything seems to work. I haven't seen anything not work yet from a functional standpoint, from an operating system standpoint. So we should be able to do pretty much whatever. Okay, so we now know that we can run applications on this thing. I think the next step in this process is let's install an antivirus on this system and let's run a scan. Okay, as far as an antivirus is concerned, one that I particularly like, that's been around for quite a while now, is SuperAntiSpyWare. If you've never used it before, I would suggest you check it out. I'll add the link in the description as to where to go to get it. They make a paid version and a free version. For the sake of this scan, I'm just going to run the free version, and we're going to do the install. So what this does is it's an antivirus, anti-malware, anti-Trojan. It'll check for ransomware. It'll check for questionable applications. It's pretty good. It's been around for quite a while now. The only thing about it, obviously, is it looks sketch, right? It looks like it's probably a scam or like one of those scam antivirus things that used to exist from back in the day. But I promise you it's not, and it really does work well. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through the installation process. I'm just going to uncheck the sending anonymous program data just because I don't want to from this operating system. And I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to click on finished. And we're going to close out of here. And then what we'll do is we'll run an antivirus scan. So it's going to ask me if I want to add web protection. I'm going to say skip. Generally speaking, you do not want to run those web input connectors. And the reason why is because they can actually skim data that you're using and analyze that data for your web searches. That's how that works. It's basically a proxy. So for a security reason, generally speaking, you don't want to run that unless you have a hosted solution in your infrastructure that is your antivirus platform. Otherwise, installing those plugins is almost always a bad idea from a, not necessarily from a security standpoint in the realm of security, but a security standpoint as far as securing your private data. You don't want to release your private information to these companies because they don't tell you specifically what they're going to do with it. They may tell you, oh, we don't sell identifiable information, but that doesn't mean that they don't sell unidentifiable information. And that's not something you want to generally put out there from a security standpoint. So the free version versus the paid version. Your paid version is going to give you real-time protection. You'll be able to set up scheduled scans, and you'll be able to set up automatic updates. But the free version, you can manually scan, just like you used to be able to do with Malware Bytes. And you can still run updates by just clicking to check for updates. We can see the last time it was updated was a minute ago. We're going to do scan this computer. Before we continue on, what we want to do is we want to go through these settings real quick. And we want to add to scan inside of zip files. And then we want to choose the advanced scan settings. And in here, we want to uncheck the ignore for both the files larger than 4 meg and for the non-executable files. Because when you have a time bomb application, technically speaking, it doesn't necessarily need to be an executable. It could be something, a script or something to that effect that may change its extension at some point or another. You want this thing to scan that. Then you also want to check the box to terminate the running threats before it quarantines them, or at least attempt to terminate them. And then once we get that set, we're just going to click on OK, and then we're going to click on complete this scan. And once this finishes, we'll jump back into this and take a look at the results. Okay, guys, so that finished. As you can see, it came back clean. We don't have anything. But keep in mind, we already know that, right? So in my initial scan on our configuration, I did a Sentinel-1 scan, and I also used the Nessus antivirus scanner plugin to scan the actual system, and both of those came back clean. But obviously, I can't show you my Sentinel-1 application scanner. I don't have any way to show you that. I have client data in there, and it's not a good idea for their security to publicly publish that on YouTube. So for the sake of this, we just run SuperAntiSpyWare, comes back, no viruses, no malware, no issues. Now, I want to do one thing. I just want to point out that in our scanner here, in our configuration, that if we go into the advanced scanning settings, you're going to have something in here that says scan only known file types. Generally speaking, if you uncheck that, that will scan every file on your system, which will take forever. In the sake for our configuration, our testing on this, generally speaking, I should probably not have that scan so we can scan the entire operating system. But with that said, if it's not an executable, if it's not a batch file, if it's not a PowerShell script, if it's not, Python, if it's not something that could be ran on a Windows-based operating system, Visual Basic, if it's not something that can be ran, then generally speaking, it's not running, right? So even if it's dormant, it can't execute if there's nothing to execute the file. Now, if there's a time bomb in this thing that once we had it connected to the internet and something remotely connected to it to change a file version from like a .txt to a .bat, then at that point, that file would become a threat on the system. But our initial scanning for our Wireshark using our network assessment that we did previously shows that we don't have any of those remote attempts into the system. And then we disabled our advertising software, our service, on this particular Windows 10 system. So even that we don't have on the system to phone home. So let's move on from here. Let's do a scan on our Wireshark. and take a look at what our results show for this particular system now that we have all our applications installed on here, as well as Office. Let's see if that makes any difference in our scan results. And then let's jump over into our Nessus scanner, and let's take another look at that system and see if this system shows anything in our Nessus scanner after adding our additional applications. Because it's possible that our applications we added, if any of them are requiring updates that we don't have applied to the system yet, we may see them as being threats or unpatched versions of applications or operating system in our Nessus scanner. So let's continue on. Let's scan this thing with Wireshark, and then let's jump into the Nessus scanner and scan it again to see if there's any changes. Okay guys, so we're back over on our Wireshark system now, and we're running a scan specifically against our Ghost 10 machine. And as you can see, even with all the applications installed, we're not seeing any traffic. And just to test it to make sure it is, that we are specifically getting traffic, let's do a ping real quick specifically to that system. So there we go. We get the ICMP. So we were seeing the relay, and now we're getting the ARP stuff back, and that's the whois, because again, we're not connected on this particular system to our internal DNS. So you're going to get that. The ARP table is going to try to figure out who specifically this machine is. With that said, I would say that we look good. I don't see any reason why we would have anything else. We don't have our advertising ID turned on anymore. We're not sending that out anymore. We're not broadcasting that on UDP. We're not seeing any traffic as far as any communication for updates, because the updates are disabled on that particular system. Even our Microsoft Edge updates, as we found in the previous video, we're not seeing those come across through the firewall or coming through the Wireshark, the capture. We're not seeing any of that traffic either. So realistically, the changes that took place between no applications and a bunch of applications didn't make any difference whatsoever. So I just want to point out that I've run a variety of different commands on these systems, and like IP source and IP address equal to the IP address, and I've done source, I've done destination, I've checked listening, and the Ghost operating system. So the Ghost operating system so far is probably one of the quietest operating systems I've ever scanned with Wireshark. So in here we could also check, we see IP destination, and we again have nothing recorded in here. And if I remove the filter, there's thousands of lines of traffic and code in here, but we just don't see anything specific to our Ghost machine, as we see here also with both directions. So IP.addr equal, we just have nothing. And this is scanning a full PCAP without any filter of any kind, so no host filter. Now I realized in the previous video that I didn't go through these specifically just because I was trying to keep the video under like 2 hours of actual watch time. But in this video, I figured we'd circle back and just look at that specifically, that we don't have any additional traffic specific to that IP address on that other machine. So let's now jump over to our Nessus scanner and take a look at the Nessus scan results for the same operating system. Okay guys, so before we jump into the Nessus scanner, there's something I want to fix here so that way I don't get those stupid SMB signing alerts anymore inside of the actual system. But I'm going to go specifically through how to fix this. So if you want to wait until the patch becomes available by Microsoft, by all means, go for it. If you want to lock it down yourself, go for it. If you want to just skip this part, I'll make sure in the description area that we have, or not the description, but the actual comments area, that we have a breakdown as to what this video contains. Feel free to just skip past it. But what we're looking at here is the configuration to fix this. So if you followed your registry specifically to this location, if you went to HKey local machines, system, CurrentControlSet, services, and then there's going to be a LanmanWorkstation as well as a LanmanServer. And these are the two locations you're going to have to locate. And then specifically in here, you're going to look for perimeters. So if we go to LanmanServer and then perimeters, we're going to look for two different keys in here. And the first key we're going to look for is the require security signature and make sure it's set to 1. And then you're also going to look for the key that specifically says enable security signature and make sure that's also set to 1. Then you're going to do the same thing for the LanmanWorkstation. You're going to make sure that you have require security signature set to 1, and then again enable security signature and it's set to 1. And that's how you fix that stupid SMB signing issue. Once you have those set, you just reboot the system, it'll solve that issue. If you want more information, the PowerShell script is specifically get SMB client configuration. And when you do that, you're going to look for the require security signature set to true. And then you're going to look for the enable security signature set to true. And as long as those values are set to true, that means that the system won't have that SMB error anymore, that problem that Microsoft has been flip-flopping on fixing. So that's how you fix that. Whether or not you want to do it, that's up to you, but that'll get rid of that medium inside of our Tenable scan. Okay, guys, so I figure what you should know before we move forward onto our Tenable scanner is that in order to revert this, like for instance, if you make this change and then you have an issue, all you really have to do is go back into these two locations, this LanmanWorkstation, LanmanServer, into the perimeters location for the require security signature and enable security signature, and change these values to 0 and reboot the system, and that'll wipe this and change this back to false for your enable security and your required security. But keep in mind, if you do that, what you're enabling is the ability for unsigned remote access to access your system. And that may be necessary if you're running like Windows 7 or 2008 R2 servers on your infrastructure and you need access to those files, like you have an old school file server. Again, that would cause issues, so you would have to flip that back. But from a security standpoint, changing that to enabled, that'll help. Just keep in mind, too, is when you go through this, if these keys don't exist and you have to add them, everything in here is case sensitive. So make sure if it shows a capital letter that you use a capital letter when you add the information. All right, guys, let's go jump into that Tenable scan now. Okay, guys, so now we're in the Tenable system. And if we jump into the Ghost 10 application install, this is basically the one I created specifically after we created our application install. You'll see that we have 38 infos, but we don't have that medium. That's because I ran the scan after I did the fix on the Windows operating system. So we have 38 infos, but we don't have any criticals, we don't have any highs, we don't have any lows, we don't have anything that's super hardcore in here, we just have infos. So at this point, I would say even with our installation of our additional applications, installation of our Office application, installation of our antivirus, system still clean, system still looks good. Now, obviously, it's going to get bigger the more you put on it. It's going to get slower the more you put on it because that's how indexing works. But ultimately, for a small footprint, compact operating system, this operating system works fantastic as a daily driver and doesn't appear to have any additional software in it that's phoning home or causing issues. So from a security standpoint, I'm going to give this 2 thumbs up. And I appreciate you guys sticking around for this video. Catch me on the next video. All right, guys, take it easy.